BRD1, I recommend the board discuss and take any action as needed to begin the process of expeditiously finding a replacement for the superintendent who tendered his resignation on July 13th, 2021. Go ahead, Mrs. Whitfield.
Well, I guess I should ask what process you guys would like to go through. Should we start talking about interims first?
Yeah, we need a second one. Second was Mrs. Andrews. So we're under discussion. Dr. LaCava, would you and Mr. Mitchell please come back and help us go through this?
I think they want to talk interim first. So, let me take it. Sure.
Who wants to go first on this? Mrs. Whitfield?
So is it all right if I make a motion on who I think we should pick for interim? Is that where we're at? No, we're on the first. All right, go ahead.
Dr. Robinson?
Thank you. I think before we get to the who, I think we need to talk about some of the process questions. If you disagree, just tell me. But so first, at the question about can the interim apply? I think we need to come to some decision about that, if the interim can apply for the permanent position. And I don't know if you want to do this one motion at a time, or what?
Yeah, let's do them one at a time. But Mrs. McQuinn?
So can I give input at this time about whether the interim can apply for the permanent?
Yeah, but I think we need a motion first
What are
on
we
the floor
talking
so we can discuss it.
Is Dr. Robinson
That
going to
is
make a
correct.
motion?
Okay, so I'll make the motion that the interim be able to apply for the permanent superintendent's position.
There's a second? Second by Mrs. McQuinn. Okay, now we're under discussion.
I would certainly not want to see us not allow an interim to apply. I would like for them to be able to apply.
Other discussion?
You got 4 for that.
Mrs. Andrews?
Just before we go further, I know in the other meeting, we said we wanted to do the interim, so do we need to vote on that?
Sorry.
Of the discussion we had earlier that we wanted to do an interim, do we need to have a vote on that before we start talking about the other stuff? I think we need to vote.
On whether,
in this
yeah, on
meeting,
whether we
whether
even
we're
have an
gonna do an
interim.
interim.
I guess that's important. Yeah, so let's pull that motion back and,
Yeah, will.
okay.
So I can do a twofer?
Good.
Can I do a twofer? So my motion would be that we appoint an interim, and I'm going to say for the sake of the motion that will start sometime before the start of the school year, and that such interim can apply to be the permanent superintendent.
Okay, we have a second on that motion. Seconded by Ms. Ayala. Discussion. Mrs. McQuinn?
Does that limit us from doing that tonight?
No.
No,
Thank you.
we're
Okay,
before the start of the school year.
thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Got that one, Dr. LaCava. So the next issue then would be,
How long? So I'd like to make a motion that the interim would serve until June 30th, 2022.
motion by Dr. Robinson, seconded by Mrs. Andrews. Mrs. Whitfield, do you have discussion?
I think we can say up until that point, but if we find somebody a little bit sooner than that and they're willing to start, I'd be willing to take them sooner than that. But can we just say that at least that hopefully they will stick around until June of 2022? And then if somebody comes earlier, we can, if the process moves faster than that, we can actually have them come a little sooner.
Ms. Brew?
Thank you. I would offer a substitute motion that the interim superintendent serves until the new superintendent, the permanent superintendent begins
Yep.
working. And that does not preclude that that person wouldn't be the same one, but until we make a decision and the person is starting.
Okay, so that's a substitute that, do I need to accept it? I won't accept it. So I'm pretty clear that we need stability. Now, and I guess what I'm trying to do is to create the situation where our expectation would be that the new superintendent will come on at the end of the school year. Things can always change. When the contract gets negotiated with the interim, it's gonna be an exit clause. Every contract on the face of the earth has one, right? And so if some fantabulous person walks up, then we can change things, but I want to set an expectation. I think our schools need it. I think that they just need to know that we're going to be, like, have some degree of cruise control almost. And so I don't want to do it that way. I'm pretty clear that I think.
I think, Dr. Robinson, the problem is, if you're suggesting there's a provision in the contract that allows us to terminate it early, then if we find somebody, that's exactly what Mrs. Brill was saying. So, I mean, the contract's either going to say he's got a job, he or she has a job until June, whatever, the end of the school year, or it's got, contracts got to say in June 3rd or sooner if the board determines or hires a new superintendent in the meantime. My concern would be that we find somebody that's really great, that wants to come here, but they don't want to wait, so they'll go to one of the other districts and say, I've got a job opening, I got a job opportunity, LA, in the LA district, they want me now, if you guys will take me, I'd rather come to Palm Beach. So I hate to lose the opportunity to get somebody that applies that's really good, that doesn't want to wait until June to come to us, so,
So I'm sorry, ma'am.
go ahead.
So, yeah, but every contract has an exit clause. So Dr. Fenoy's contract, we expected him to stay. It had an exit clause. I mean, every contract has an exit clause. What I'm saying is to set the expectation. And I hear what you're saying. I understand those words. I don't think that is the state of affairs with superintendents across the country, that will happen. But I want stability. So
Ms. Burrow.
what you want?
Thank you, and I want stability too, but I will not accept us putting a date on it, because again, someone fantastic can come. We can try and see if we can get someone for the end of the year, but I think just saying that we're going to have the interim serve until such time as our new superintendent begins gives us flexibility. I mean, we may not find somebody even by June, who knows? But I don't want to be boxed in. I do want to have stability, and I also don't want to rule out that superstar who may actually land here in Palm Beach County.
Mrs. Andrews.
Yes, Ms. Brill, I can live with that. I just don't want us to rush again. I just remember when we rushed before, and we had lost a whole lot of people, and then we ended up with just that little group that we had, and we didn't have everything that we needed. I just know we do need stability here, and I see us looking at a year. It may be before then, I doubt it, because I work with a lot of these big school districts anyway, so I do believe it's going to take us a year anyway, but I'm open to leaving that there, but I don't want any rush. I just really want to feel that we're going to get the input from our stakeholders, we're going to do this job right this time, it's going to be thorough, and if we're going to really do it the way we say we're going to do it, we're going to need a lot of time to do it. And certainly a star might shoot down to us and say, hey, I've got to have Palm Beach County, and I've got to have Palm Beach County tonight.
That's right.
Okay, we'll jump to that. But I just want to make sure everybody knows that we're not going to eliminate all the pieces of the puzzle so that we can really build the airplane that we truly want for this next superintendent before we just do it.
Yeah, Mrs. Andrews, remember, the board will have the opportunity to approve a timeline, so we can make sure that we factor in all of that time we need. I don't want to rush it either. I just don't want to limit us to, somebody shows up in March and says they want the job, but they don't want to wait till the end of the school year because they want to come here sooner. I just don't want to lose the opportunity. By then, the word will be out that Palm Beach County's looking and somebody may show up. I'm not suggesting we rush the process. I just want us to have the flexibility to move on it if somebody shows up. General Counsel, we can put something in the contract, but it would have to say that the board on, 30 days notice can terminate the interim superintendent without cause, and So if we just, I mean, can we put something like that in the
You
contract?
can put some flexible language, and Mr. Littlejohn, can you speak to what we've done possibly with other interim contracts?
If it's the board's pleasure, I think you can put in a date for through June 2022 and also have a early termination provision at the option of the board.
All right, so Dr. Robinson, you okay with that?
What, the
Having
termination?
early termination provision?
Absolutely. So can I, who seconded my motion? You did? Alexander,
Mrs. McQuinn made the motion.
can I amend my motion? Because actually, I would like it to be, instead of June 30th, 2022, the last day of school. Whatever that date is, May something or other, because I don't have a calendar. So is there a second on that one?
Mrs. McQuinn, will you agree to that change in the motion?
Our
Second.
clarification is that the last student day of school?
Okay.
Well, I'm just simply getting clarification to her motion before I try to
Absolutely.
second her motion.
That's what I intended. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, Ms. Brill?
Thank you. So, Dr. Robinson, if I was to follow your logic,
Mhm.
you're saying that you feel that, and this was in our previous conversations, that superintendents look at a whole school year. You have to remember that most districts around the country don't end in May. They end in June because they start later. So, I'm not comfortable with that language at all. I understand the intent is to try to get through the school year. I am afraid that I do want to make it a very thoughtful process, but I also don't see any problem with us. We can put the parameters in our ad, but I would rather leave it open-ended in terms of a date because state of New York, they may be ending the middle or the end of June. And just because we're ending in May doesn't mean that superintendent's going to abandon their district to come start down here.
So, Mr. Brill, what you're suggesting is the interim would serve until the superintendent's found, whether it's earlier than the end of the school year or later than the end of the school year. Well, that's not the current motion on the floor. Mrs. Andrews?
And once you begin to do the search process, as you said, Mr. Barbieri, the timeline, all that stuff's going to be in there. People will understand. These superintendents are very unique in knowing exactly what's happening around them. So they will know what you're talking about because as we begin to work through the process, they're working through their own process as to what they can do based on their contract. So it can be open-ended, Mrs. Brill, as long as we just know that we're going to be tight on what we're doing.
Ms. Ayala?
I don't believe there should be a time limit on the interim. I think working until we identify who the individual who is permanent is going to be, we can make so that there's a timeline for that identification and the transfer of title. I think that gives us more flexibility with everything that we have to go through with a national search and options in the process. So it's my 2 cents on that.
Is there any other discussion? So the current motion on the floor would be Dr. Robinson's motion to end the interim position on the last day of student enrollment in the school district for the next school year, and have a provision in the contract suggested by Mr. Littlejohn that the contract can be terminated earlier if we find a superintendent in the meantime. Mrs. Whitfield?
In that contract, can we also extend if we want to, Mr. Littlejohn?
Well, there's
Can
no,
we extend it as well, or is it just a provision to terminate early?
Subject to the agreement of both parties.
The parties could always agree to extend. I mean, if you want to write in there that you have some unilateral right to extend, sure.
I don't
you
need
could-
unilateral, but I just would like the option to be able to, what if everything falls apart and we can't find anyone? We may
Well,
need.
the parties could always agree
we could have a
to
provision in the contract that's
extend it for.
mutually agreeable to the parties that
Okay,
contract can be
well, I
extended.
can live with this. I mean, this is fine.
All right, is everybody okay with that motion then? Okay, we're going to vote. All in favor? Opposed? I'm trying to decide. I
Save
think-
your
I think there's-
tiebreaker for a better vote.
I think there's enough flexibility in Dr. Robinson's motion to allow us to end the contract, and end it earlier if we find someone. So, Ms. Brill?
I still just don't understand why we have to put dates there, because we know what our intent is. And why bother with having to extend or having to shorten it? I mean, if we just put the words in where it's going to be when they begin in their position, it just leaves, it's just so much cleaner
All
than
right.
going back and extending or.
I'll vote with the other three and against the recommendation, the current motion on the floor. Ms. Brill, you want to make a replacement motion? Motion fails.
I was kind
Turn your microphone on, Ms. Bass. It was Ms.
just wanna-
McQuinn, Ms. Ayala, Mrs. Whitfield, no, Ms. Brill, and me.
I was a nay, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
5-2?
4-3. Mrs. Whitfield voted in favor of it, Dr. Robinson did, and so did Mrs.
I'm
Anderson.
good, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brill.
So my motion would be that, I forgot, I'm getting tired, sorry, that the term of the interim superintendent shall be until the new superintendent begins in his position. Right, yes. In their new position.
All right, do we have a second on Ms. Brill's motion by Mrs. Whitfield? Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That one passed 7-0. Next issue,
The, you want to talk about the
Contract.
effective date?
Dr. Robinson, you want to go with the next
To
one?
do the contract.
Yeah, I think if I'm checking this off in the correct order, then my next motion would be that we accelerate the effective date of the superintendent's resignation to be the date that the interim starts.
That's your motion?
That's my motion.
Seconded by Mrs. McQuinn. Discussion. Mrs. Whitfield.
I think I should offer an amended motion where it is to end on the date of the new superintendent with an option for consulting should the new superintendent choose, the interim superintendent choose. I really think that they're going to need that option in there, so that would be my amended motion.
Is there a second on Mrs. Whitfield's amendment? Ms. McQuinn, you
Okay,
seconded it?
so with Robert's Rules of Orders, we don't vote on the first one, we're doing another amendment. All right, where are we?
The motion is that the superintendent, Dr. Fenoy's contract would end when the interim takes over. The amendment would be, if somebody seconds the amendment would be that at the option of the interim, they could ask for some additional time with Dr. Fenoy, so Dr. Fenoy would be moved into a consulting type arrangement with the interim until the interim felt that, so we take, we take some consideration of what the interim would like. That's got a second. Okay, discussion? Ms. McQuinn.
Well, I haven't been able to say this yet, and I just have to. We all know that during Dr. Fenoy's time on this board, I have been a very strong supporter of him. So when I advocate for it, and I'm going along with this transition in terms of what an interim would want, although I don't want any confusion about whose voice is whose, but it is not that I don't value Dr. Fenoy's input. Clearly, I have been very supportive. Who knew what he would have to deal with when he came on board? So I just want to make it very clear that I am pleased that he has taken us to where we are. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor? On the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Now on the main motion. All in favor? Opposed?
Now they need an
Opposed?
effective date for the-
Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Joe, you got that? You don't think so? Okay, so the original motion was that the interim superintendent, Dr. Fenoy's contract would end when the interim superintendent starts. The amendment is that the Dr. Fenoy's contract would end based on the request from the interim superintendent that Dr. Fenoy stay in a consulting type arrangement until the interim, based on what the interim would like the board to do. That one passed, 7-0. They both passed, yes. Dr. Robinson.
Okay, so I would, I offer a motion that the scope of the search, the search method, the search timeline, the position description, qualification, salary range, and implementation all be postponed until, I don't even know, where are we? Yeah, not tonight. Until our, September board meeting.
Okay, Dr. LaCava, did you want to make a
No, the only
comment?
thing that I wanted to mention that Mark brought up is that we need an effective date for the start of the interim superintendent.
Just
So we-
hang on, just hang on.
Okay, hang
Okay.
on, very
We'll-
good,
We'll get there eventually
no
tonight.
problem.
All right, so Dr. Robinson has a motion that the September board meeting, the regularly scheduled September board meeting, would be the meeting that we discuss the timeline and adopt the timeline and all that other. You're seconding that motion, Mrs. Andrews? Any discussion on that one? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. You're on a roll, Doctor.
Mr. Chairman? Could I ask for a point of clarity for a minute? Thank you. I wanted two questions. On the motion we passed to allow the interim to select to keep Dr. Fenoy on as a consultant. I'm curious if that's something Dr. Fenoy is even interested in.
Yeah, so it is, when I signed my contract, that language is in there about a transition in the event of an interim. I am more than prepared to do that at the will and pleasure of the interim superintendent. Yes, ma'am.
Second question was, should that power to assign that be with the board or with the interim? That's it.
I think the board will take recommendations from the interim and then make a decision
it.
based on the recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
from the interim. Mrs.
Yeah,
Whitfield?
for sure.
Is it time now to pick an interim? All right, I'd like to nominate Mike Burke.
We have a second? Seconded by Ms. Brill. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mr. Burke is the interim superintendent. Dr. Robinson?
I think we need to put some time, a timeline, a start date on that.
Yep, that's the next thing.
Okay.
And I'd have another recommendation to add to that, that the item be brought back perhaps for next board meeting to allow time to negotiate a contract, so the board can make a motion to that effect as well, and you'll see that.
The motion would bring back his contract at the next board meeting for discussion and adoption by the board,
Yes, as well as an effective date, if you,
as well as the effective date. Ms. Brill?
Thank you, and I think that we do also have to ask Mr. Burke, if he, first of all, if he's willing, and second of all, how much time, if next week, if we were to appoint, if we were to make it effective next week, if he would be prepared to transition his office to his person who would be acting, who we all know, but she who shall not be named this time.
Yes, I am prepared, and we can pull that off in a week. And whenever it's appropriate, I'd like to thank the board.
So I'm going to
Don't be
follow
so
up.
quick with that, thank you. I don't know if that's a,
Thank you.
You
So
don't get a musical
I-
reference?
I'll follow up with a motion. I'll follow up with a motion that we bring back the contract for our interim superintendent next week, and that our chairman will work with legal to put that together.
we have Dr. Robinson? We have a
if I
second?
may,
I'm seconding, but I would also, yes.
if I may, Chair, I would recommend that the chairman, if that is the pleasure of the board, that work with legal and HR.
Okay, you're okay with that motion? So amended. Okay, she changed that motion. Dr. Robinson?
And to, if I may, add to that motion that, that he would take the interim position effective immediately after board approval.
After board approval, so if it's next Wednesday, it'll be at that time.
General Counsel, you have any issue with how we're doing this?
Immediate, I missed the tail end of that, immediate after the contract? Is that what you said?
What I'm trying to say is if the negotiations take place and it comes to the board next week, the board approves it, boom, he starts immediately.
You can make a motion to that effect, yes.
That's what I tried to do.
Okay, but we have a motion on the floor, I think.
Yeah, having to work on that.
Okay, so will you agree to that? Okay, so Carol, you have that? Okay, so is there- whoever seconded the motion, Ms. Brill's motion, do you agree to the modification? Oh, Dr. Robinson was the one, okay. Go ahead, Mrs. McQuinn.
Going to Ms. Bernard, though, she did say, I don't know if we got it in there, that general counsel and HR would be working together. Okay.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
They just did.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
We're good.
Mr. Burke, you would like to make a few comments before we move on here?
I would, yes. I would like to thank the board for entrusting me with this responsibility. I am honored, and I promise I will work hard to make you proud of this appointment. I'd also like to thank Dr. Fenoy. He shouldered a huge responsibility in guiding our school district through the most challenging times in modern history. And I always appreciate that. I know it was tough. You know, the strength of our school district is our people. It's our dedicated teachers, school administrators, bus drivers, custodians, food service workers, you know, police officers, maintenance crews, and I could go on and on. We've got in a full list of support staff, and they always rise to the challenge. I think they proved that last year with the pandemic, opening our schools in the midst of all that, and it's going to take a concerted effort again this year to meet the heightened needs of our students. You know, coming off, well, the pandemic's still going, but we know with the full return to brick and mortar, the needs of our kids are great. You know, let me just check. I did have some notes. I thought I had it memorized, but anyway, I am excited to work with all of our colleagues, 23,000 strong, to move this district forward and to make our schools a place where all students feel welcome and have the opportunity to pursue their dreams. You know, I know this is a tough job. I wouldn't be able to do it without the support of my beautiful wife, Kristen, and our 3 children. Our children are grown now, and I feel like I'm in a good point in my career to take on this challenge. And I just look forward to working with the whole team. And once again, I'd just like to thank the board for your trust and support.
Thank you. Ms. Brill, then Mrs. Andrews, then Mrs. Whitfield.
Thank you. So I just want to thank you, Mr. Burke, for all the years that I've come to know you, that you've sat through these meetings and are still willing to step up into that position. I think that says something to your character. And just a point of personal privilege, I want to once again thank Dr. Fenoy, because his leadership has been very strong and steady. And he does have a vested interest in our continued success, because his little babies are going to continue to be students in our district. So I know that you two will work well together. I'm going to miss my meetings with Dr. Fenoy, because I want to thank him again for getting us through such a rough period of time. So thank you.
Mrs. Andrews? Sure, certainly, Dr.
Well, I just want to say first, congratulations, Mike, and to the whole team. You know, it's going to be really great to be a regular citizen. And, you know, I get to come to the meetings and voice my opinion without the filters of my bosses being next to me. But more importantly, I just ask you, Mike, and the rest of the team, you know, both of my babies will be going to school, and so I just ask that you take care of them. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Andrews?
Thank you, and congratulations, Mr. Burke. We've been together a long time. I was your wife's teacher, so I know you, and we know each other well. So it's great to see you in this position, but I want to say that we're doing well here in the School District of Palm Beach County. We had about 4 great names of people, and I'm excited to see you here in this position. But I wanted to tell you something that just happened right before the meeting. I was very pleased to see the board unified on your selection. So this is something that we have to continue to do as we move forward for our permanent superintendent. I like this collaboration that I saw here tonight, and we're all on the same page. But I got this email from Mr. Oswald, and I just wanted to read it because I think the team out there, it takes more than just Mr. Burke. We know who you are, and we know your hard work ethic and that you're going to do the best for our children. But it takes all those people sitting behind you, Mr. Burke, and we know how great they are because they do good work. But I received this email from Mr. Oswald, and I just want to read it because I think we got superstar people everywhere. And he said, good afternoon, board members. He said, I know the most important decision for the board is hiring for the superintendent position. I would like to provide my support for Mr. Mike Burke in the position. Mr. Burke has an outstanding track record with the school district. He is trusted and an honest employee of the school district and will lead us well during the transition. And it said, thank you, Mr. Oswald. And I thank Mr. Oswald and I thank the team, the whole team back there, for standing with Mr. Burke because we're going to move this district, and I'm pretty happy tonight.
Yes. I'm just so glad you shared that, and it means so much to me. Mr. Oswald's a class act, and, you know, I think it's no secret that my strength is on the finance and operations and, you know, the business side of the district, and it's going to take all of us, our whole team here, working together, and I'm very fortunate to have these colleagues, and anyway, thank you.
Mr. Burke, don't leave yet. Mrs. Whitfield, then Mrs. McQuinn.
Thank you. Well, let me just first of all say thank you so much, Mr. Burke, for stepping up. I truly love you guys. Everybody who's willing to do this job, it just means so much to me. Huge thank you to Mr. Oswald for that email. It just fills my heart. You guys, I feel like we're all in a foxhole sometimes, and y'all are really there for us and support us so much. So in my tradition of picking a song for the superintendent, I got you one. Let's see if we can hear it. Hold on. It went away. I know, it's an awful song. I love it. I'm not really good at music, but I really, really think this is good.
Thanks.
Mrs. McQuinn?
It was
Thank
simply
you.
to read Mr. Oswald's email, which was already done for me, and thank you, Mr. Oswald. That made this easier. Thank you.
Ms. Brill?
Thank you, and I just want to acknowledge the other people in this room who I know I've spoken to a couple, who made it very clear to me that they either chose not to want to take the position because they cared about the stability, and had also said that if they didn't get the position, that they were going to do everything they could to assist and make sure we continue on this track. So we have, Dr. Fenoy put together a great team here, and everybody in this room has pledged that they're going to work together. So I want to acknowledge all of you and thank you all for your very hard work for the benefit of our students and our employees. So thank you.
All right. Ms. Ayala?
Congratulations, Mike, and thank you for stepping up at a time when our district really needs steady leadership. I want to echo some sentiments and thank anyone who was willing to do that. Dr. Licata, Mr. Oswald, all of you for steady leadership, recognition of your role in our continued success. We can't do it without you, and I'm excited for the future of the district and for some time to get to know you a little better, Mr. Burke, in this role. And thank you, everyone, for just wanting to stay committed during a time when public education is getting beat up left and right, and stay in the fight and do what's best for kids, who are our #1 priority. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And finally, Mr. Burke, I'd like to throw in my congratulations. You know, I've always been amazed at the fact that you can balance a $3.8 billion budget and we still, it must be a monumental task to do that. And you've done it great, and all of our outside audits have never found any findings. So, I mean, it's just, and you've won all kinds of awards for that. When I thought about who is best suited to be the interim, in the district right now. Your name came to mind first because although you are heavy on the operations side, I don't think there's any decisions ever made on the academic side that you're not part of those meetings also because you have the checkbook. So I would think that, whether they're academic meetings or they're operations meetings, that you're involved with those meetings. So when I was trying to think who best has in the district at this point, has the knowledge to do both the academic side and the operations side, and I understand you'll have to have the academic, we have an excellent academic team with Mr. Tierney and Mr. Oswald and Dr. Sheffield, and I'll probably miss somebody and then get chewed out tomorrow, but there's an excellent academic team here that you'll rely on, but I just believe with your experience, all the years you've been here, you've been CFO, you've been COO, you've been the chief financial officer for years and won all kinds of awards for the work that you've helped keep this district solvent, and so I think you'll do a great job for us until we find our next superintendent, who may be you, but let's.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's-